ego, the part of you that believes that you have separated from this divinity into which you were created. And as long as you're here, believing that you're separate from it, you will not understand the powers that you get when you figure out a way to reconnect to your source. And becoming quiet and becoming someone who is making conscious contact with your source is what I'm asking you to look at. Because once you leave this ego behind, once you leave behind this idea that I'm separate from it and reconnect to it, then all of the powers of the source, of the ocean, the powers to create and sustain life, the powers to heal, the powers to attract abundance into my life, the powers to make my relationships divine and beautiful, the powers to appreciate, the powers to be miraculous. As one of my teachers, Abraham Maslow, once said, that self-actualizing people, these people who live at the highest levels, are people who must be what they can be. They must be what they're potentially capable of being. And this is what I mean by being in the world of spirit. One of my favorite Persian poets, Rumi, who lived back in the 13th century, once said, "Sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment." Be in a state of bewilderment. That's what I mean by being spiritual. One of the ways to test whether you're on the path that I'm speaking about, the path of being into a spiritual being, having a human experience rather than the other way around, is to detect in yourself how much of my energy and my time do I spend being in a state of cheerfulness. How cheerful am I? Or how morose am I? How down am I? How, when I'm coming home to my family and to those that I love, how am I anticipating what it's going to be like when I go into the house? Am I down more? Am I unhappy more? Am I looking at the pessimistic side of life? Am I always feeling that something might be wrong? Am I putting my attention on what I don't want? Because if your thoughts are on what you don't want, and what you think about is what expands, what you don't want is what you'll continue to see showing up in your life. You'll keep purchasing it. Another element of what we call spiritual in these three words in this program is the sense or the extent to which you feel connected to other people. You see, the ego is the part of us that believes that we're separate from each other. I'm separate from you, you're separate from me. You have a different body than I do. I'm separate from what I would like to attract into my life, and I am separate from God. When you move into a spiritual approach to life, you begin to see yourself as connected to everyone and everything. And competition is replaced by something called cooperation. And when you see another human being in pain or struggling, you know that a part of you is in pain and struggling. And you begin to reach out rather than looking within and saying, how does this affect just me? It's almost as if you have to make a shift. And there's a wonderful story, and I'd like to share this story with you. It's a story, this is a story that took place at the Special Olympics in Seattle. And it's a true story. And when I read it, it really grabbed me. And I thought, when I do this program, I would like to share this with the rest of the world. A few years ago at the Seattle Special Olympics, 9 contestants, all physically or mentally disabled, assembled at the starting line for the 100-yard dash. At the gun, they all started out, not exactly in a dash, but with a relish to run the race, to finish, and to win. All that is except one little boy who stumbled on the asphalt and tumbled over a couple of times, and he began to cry. The other 8 heard the little boy crying. They slowed down and looked back. Then they all turned around and went back, and every single one of them. And one little girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed him and said, "This will make it better." Then all 9 linked arms and walked together to the finish line. Everyone in the stadium stood, and the cheering went on for several minutes. Isn't that a beautiful story? It's the kind of thing that I refer to when I use this word spiritual. A sense of an awareness that it isn't about being better than somebody else. I think true nobility is not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than you used to be. And I know this about myself. that if any one of you watching this show, or any of you here in this audience were giving this talk, I could be sitting in that audience, and I would have just as much to learn from what you had to say to me as you have to learn from what I may be saying to you. The thing that I know for certain today is that I'm just better than I used to be. As a man, as a father, as a writer, as a speaker, I know that I'm better than I used to be. And I try to make that something that I do each and every day. Just a little bit better than I used to be. To me, that's what I mean when I use the concept of spirituality. So there we have problem, which is a mistake of the intellect, believing that we are separate from our source, things that we carry around inside of us. Remember that if any one of you were just suddenly given the wand, which took away your ability to think, all of your problems would go with it. All right? And spiritual, it means cheerfulness, it means kindness, it means peace, it means love, it means forgiveness, it means living these principles, feeling connected and knowing that you're infinite. And finally, the word solution. And what is the solution? The solution is the most exciting part of the program. The solution for me represents the ability to bring to your life something that can make these things called problems disappear, dissolve, and nullify. And that is what I spoke about when I opened up here a little while ago about energy. Energy comes in the form of fast and slow, high and low. And higher and faster energy nullifies lower and slower energy. A room full of darkness. Darkness is a lower and a slower energy, if you measure it, than is light. And when you bring light to the presence of a dark room, the darkness disappears, and that is a metaphor for every single one of the problems and concerns and struggles that you are facing in your life. And way back, 800 years ago, there lived a little man who gave up all of his possessions. He lived in a little village in Italy, near Florence, called Assisi. And we named one of our most famous cities in America after him. His name was Francesco, or as he became known later after his passing, St. Francis of Assisi. And I went to Assisi, and I had miracles that took place for me in visiting Assisi on several occasions. And St. Francis was one of these people who created a prayer that is perhaps the most well-known prayer on the planet today, certainly one of them. And when I wrote A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, I took the first 7 lines of this famous prayer, and I made them into a chapter of the book. And I'd like to share those with you here in this program right now, those 7 lines, because they represent an 800-year-old technology, if you will, for bringing a spiritual solution to anything in your life that constitutes a problem. The first line in this famous prayer says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. How can I become an instrument of thy peace? The ego is the part of us that wants to be at war, that wants to defeat, that wants to collect, that wants to be better than, that wants to always get more. The sacred or the highest part of ourselves is the part of us that just wants to be at peace. How can I become an instrument of peace? Not someone who's looking for peace, but someone who delivers it. There are opportunities every day. I was in a gas station just a few days ago, and in this gas station they had a car wash. And there was a young boy, he was maybe 18 or 19 years old, and he didn't speak English very well, and he couldn't figure out how to work the car wash. And he had put $2 in, and apparently it required $3. And he was in there waiting to pay for his his car wash and trying to get an answer to why he couldn't get it to work. And I had just gotten some gasoline, and I walked in, and there was this man behind the counter berating this young boy and humiliating him and talking to him. And because he didn't understand the language, he talked louder to him. You know how people do that? You know, if someone doesn't understand you, you say, "What I said is," and they say, "I don't understand," and then you say it even louder. Well, that's what he was doing to this young boy. And I saw this is an opportunity right here in this instant to be an instrument of peace. And I put my arm around the young man, and I said, "Come with me." And I walked out to the machine, and I took $1, and I put it into the, and he walked away, and he was just so happy. One tiny little incident. These kinds of things, I suggest to you that you take this day and look for 5 occasions to be an instrument of peace. And you'll find one when you're on your way home, on the freeway. You'll find somebody who isn't going to let you get in. You find somebody who doesn't want to let you pass. And instead of, giving them a hard time or being angry at them, try sending something called peace their way. There's a wonderful line that I have on the dashboard of my car. It says, "I can choose peace rather than this." And it's always a reminder that no matter what I'm experiencing in my life, I want to be an instrument of peace. The second line in this very famous prayer says, "Where there is hatred, let me sow love." It's been said that the 3 most difficult things to do in the world are this. The first is to send love in response to hatred. The second is to defend the absent. That is, whoever's being gossiped about, you become their spokesperson. I do this with my children all the time when they're all saying this, and then she said that, and he said that. I'll say, "Excuse me, but who is defending the absent person here?" "Well, why should anybody defend her?" I'll say, "Well, I'll just take her position right now if you don't mind." And the third is to admit when you were wrong. And it doesn't mean necessarily to say, "I just made a mistake." It means to say, "I have been making the wrong kinds of choices in my life with my mind. I've been putting my attention on what I don't want, on what others want from me, on what the world ought to be, on what it used to be, and I can't understand why it just keeps showing up, what I don't want, what others want from me, what I despise." I have to admit, I have to rewrite my agreement with reality. And there's a woman that I have a great deal of admiration for who passed away a short time ago. Her name was Mother Teresa, a woman whom people all over the world revered, no matter what their religious persuasion. And this is one of the things that Mother Teresa said. When people say to me, "How do I do this? How can I make this work?" I say, "This is a way." And I put this in the book, and I wanted to include it in this program. It's called The Final Analysis. And this is what she said. And there's so much beauty in this. And so much of what St. Francis was speaking about back in the 13th century, because he was a man who was ridiculed wherever he went. And he was just out there trying to teach people to bring the solution, spiritual solution to your problems. If hatred is existing in your world, that's an energy field. It's a lower and a slow energy than the energy of love. If you can bring love to the presence of that hatred, it will be nullified just as if you were bringing light to darkness. But for most of us, what we do when we see hatred is we respond in kind to that hatred. There's a wonderful book that I have a great affection for. It's called Power versus Force. It's written by a psychiatrist. His name is David Hawkins, and he's a PhD as well. And he talks about how mankind has not evolved because every time we have a dispute, what we do in that dispute is when someone has hatred or anger or any of these slower and lower energies, is that we respond with the same energy of hatred and anger. And what we do is we create a counterforce, and that counterforce weakens everyone in its energy field. They said of Jesus, they said of Buddha, they said of these great spiritual masters, and Mother Teresa was one, that when they would walk into a village, just their presence in the village and nothing more would raise the consciousness of those around them. Just by being in the presence of someone who radiates out this kind of love, you alter it and change it. And here's what Mother Teresa said. She said, people are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, she said, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone may destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may just never be enough. Give the world the best you have anyway. You see, she said, in the final analysis, it's all between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Isn't that beautiful? It's Mother Teresa, and you should applaud because she deserves that. Thank you. You begin to see that this is an 800-year-old technology. This prayer isn't the most famous prayer in the world, or one of them, because it just happens to be catchy. This prayer of St. Francis is revered by people of all persuasions all over the world because it represents a spiritual solution to any problem you could ever face. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. How can I bring pardon to the presence of injury? And what is pardon but forgiveness? And what is forgiveness but the ability to love someone in response to something that they may have done to you that you feel hurt by at some time in your life? There's a Chinese proverb that says, if you're going to pursue revenge, you'd better dig 2 graves. Because one of those graves will be for yourself. You know, I told you the story at the beginning of this program of my biology teacher and the leaf collection. Always be careful about how you treat anybody in your life. Even your little children. You may work for them someday. 15 years after I took biology for the second time that summer, because I wouldn't do a leaf collection, I received my doctorate degree from Wayne State University in Detroit. And I was given the opportunity to teach as a faculty member, as an adjunct faculty member there, Dr. Dyer. Very proud. With my own parking place. That was the best. And I was given my class assignment, and there was my roster, and I had 30 students in there, and this course was a course in child development, child psychology, and adolescent psychology. It was a course that all of the people who wanted to become administrators in the school system had to take in order to become certified as a school administrator. And there on my roster was my former biology teacher. It's a true story. Now my student, needing this course in order for him to get on with his goals in his life. He did a leaf collection like you wouldn't believe. No, it's not true. No revenge. I didn't even tell him, but I often thought about sending him down to Australia to get some eucalyptus leaves. It's just a requirement of the course. Everyone has to do it. But I didn't. Where there is doubt, faith. How can I bring faith to the presence of doubt? Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet, once said that faith is the sound that the songbird makes before the dawn. Before the dawn. The songbird has got incredible faith. He knows the dawn is coming. And the ability of each and every one of us to just go within and find something inside of us. Someone said to me today that that's fine what you're talking about, but he said, I'm an atheist. And I said to him, I said, try not to think of it in terms of whether or not you belong to a perfect system, or whether God exists or doesn't exist the way you have been raised to believe. Try thinking of it as a presence. When you go to sleep tonight, look at your fingernails and know that in the morning they're going to be just a little bit longer than they were when you went to sleep. That there's a force in the universe that is everywhere. And this force doesn't grow your fingernails and stop yours from growing. This force doesn't allow your hair to grow. Well, that's not a good example. This force doesn't beat your heart and not mine. There's one force, one power in all of the universe, and it grows our fingernails, and it beats our heart, and it aligns the planets, and it opens every flower every morning, and it is this universal one song, universe, one song, that connects everything in the universe. It is a way of looking at the world from a spiritual perspective. Where there is despair, said Francesco, let me send hope. Michelangelo once responded, he said, the greater danger is not that our hopes are too high and we fail to reach them. It's that they are too low and we do. I do talk radio across the country all the time. And people will call in with a disease that has been diagnosed as terminal. And I will always tell that person that whatever energy that allowed any miracle to ever take place, that law is still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. Go to that place. Go to that place within you, that quiet place where you have an awareness that you can commune and reconnect to your source. And go there and be at peace. Find that inner joy, that inner island, that inner Tahiti that Melville described, that allows you to know that I am not going to have despair. I'm going to have hope. Where there is darkness, light. And I've spoken already about this whole metaphor of darkness and light. One of the most beautiful quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, Ralph, who sat right there, he said, there is no object so foul that intense light will not make it beautiful. And so often our thoughts are of darkness. So often at night, sometimes people they'll lie in their bed and they won't have any light in the room, and their mind will go into all of the fears and all of their worries and all of the stress. And I tell people, turn the light on. Bring light, literally bring light to that presence. Because in the daytime, when the sun is out, when you're out in the light, things just don't seem the same as they do in the darkness, do they? And it's that light, the bringing light to the presence of darkness. Light is a higher and a faster energy. Bring that energy to the presence of that lower and slower energy called darkness. And it is nullified. It can't survive, nor can hate, nor can anger. Perfect love, it says in the scriptures, perfect love casteth out all fear. Fear cannot exist in the presence of love. And sadness cannot exist in the presence of joy. Where there is sadness, Francesco said, let me bring joy. Let me find a way inside of me to bring joy into my life. Many people in my life have brought me great joy. Some of them are here today. One of them is a lady who has worked for me for over 20 years. She doesn't understand the concept of not having accidents yet, and I've talked over and over again about when you reach the level of consciousness I'm speaking about, you will access things called intuition and insight, and then you will not be slipping back into these worlds of problems. Her name is Maya Lebo. She sits right here. Thanks for being here, Maya. God bless you. so many wonderful and powerful people in my life. All of them have done this thing for me. They have brought joy to the presence at times in my life of perhaps worry, perhaps fear, perhaps a little grief, sadness. And when I see them, I know that I'm living this prayer. You know, when I was raising my children, and I'm still doing that, one of my little girls, her name is Sky, and when she was just a baby, she would love to sit on my stomach when we were in the swimming pool or in the ocean. And she would just sit up there, and she would love to sing. And when she would sit up on there, we would sing this song. And I would put my arms in the water, and she would be sitting up there. She's a year and a half old, and she would laugh. She was always full of laughter and beauty. And we'd sing this song. And as we'd sing the song, I remember going back into my home and writing the words down, because they seemed to me that some of the simplest things that we say to ourselves continuously often get repeated because there's such great wisdom in them. Like that quote I used earlier of Shakespeare's, to be or not to be. That is the question. It is the fundamental question that Emerson and Thoreau and Alcott and Hawthorne and Julia Ward Howe and all of these people who came here, Louisa May Alcott, so all of these people were asking these questions and asking people to look at their own lives and to find within them their own divinity and not be doubting that and finding fault with it. And as we would sing this song, I thought it had so much meaning, it had so much sense. And the song goes like this. Most of you know it. We would sing, row, row, row. And as we would sing, row, 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 I would think that just means to me, just go out there into your life and be and work and do. Because when you're born, Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese poet, said, when you are born, your work is placed in your heart. There's something that you came here to do. There's no mistakes in this universe. The only mistakes are the mistakes that we have, that we are separate from the perfection into which we were created. Row, row, row your boat. Don't row my boat. Don't row somebody else's boat. Don't try to row a boat that somebody else tells you you should be rowing. Row, live, work your own boat. And how do you row this boat? Always gently. Always gently. Always with love. Always with peace. Always with kindness. Row your boat that way. Row your boat gently down the stream. Don't row up the stream. It takes away all of your energy. And it'll just create a counterforce of frustration for you. Get in the stream of life and row your boat gently down the stream with the currents of life, with the great Creator. Merrily, always with joy, always with cheerfulness, merrily, 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 merrily. And you know, Thoreau put it this way. He said, our truest life is when we are in our dreams awake, because life is but a dream. Let's sing it together just for a minute. Together. Ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. That's all it is. It's just a dream. God bless you, and thank you for coming today.
Coming up next, a special bonus segment. Dr. Dyer demonstrates the energy of our thoughts, plus a special musical performance.
Everything in the universe has an energy. This isn't just scientific talk. We're now beginning to discover, through some of the work that has being done by kinesthesiologists and so on, that every thought has an energy. And that thoughts go from very, very low and slow energy to very high and very fast energy. And these can be measured